Hyvää iltaa, arvoisa yleisö.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this grand opening of Hyneman Center, the first one in the world.
Illan aloittivat upeasti Lappeenrannan musiikkiopiston soittajat Veikka Ikäheimonen, Liisa Riihimäki ja Onni-Pekka Kanerva opettajaan Jarkko Palokas. Äsken kuulemamme kappale oli Marble Machine. Sen alkuperäissovitus on muuten tehty vanerista ja marmorikuulista tehdylle kovin eriskummalliselle soittolaitteelle. YouTubessa tämä nerokas keksintö on kerännyt jo yli 80 miljoonaa katselukertaa.
This song was Marble Machine, and the original version is actually played with a machine made of plywood and marbles. So let's see, maybe after this evening someone will get inspired and will build their own music instrument in the Hyneman Center.
Näiden alkutahtojen myötä olette kaikki lämpimästi tervetulleita Hyneman Centerin tuttavallisemmin JHC:n avajaisiin. Minä olen Henri Antikainen ja opiskelen kauppatieteitä LUTissa.
And my name is Anniina Ruohola, and I study chemical engineering here in LUT. Welcome all, it's nice to see that you are so many here. The next person we will see now on this stage is the president of LUT, Juha-Matti Saksa.
Seuraavaksi laittakaamme rokki soimaan. Toivotetaan tervetulleeksi LUTin oma Juhis.
No niin, tästä se sitten lähtee. Jamie hoitaa kyllä tänään rokkaamisen. Eli good afternoon, dear ladies and gentlemen. I promised to tell you a big secret in the end of my presentation, and I'll do that in Finnish, that no one will copy it abroad. And then show the way. Never follow, always be curious. That is the scientific mindset I hope we all will absorb during our years in Lappeenranta University of Technology or LUT University. That means the question, the conventional ways of thinking and working. I encourage all our students and staff to find out our own way in life and to find a new path for the good of the world and, of course, other people. LUT Hyneman Center brings together students, university research, and skills as well as companies. The center is more than talking cheap. It's doing things and testing ideas in real life without any delay. This way, the student has a strong connection with the student entrepreneurship and, of course, university innovation system. And today we will see that the student projects are absolute great examples of doing things. Ja sitten siihen suuren salaisuuteen. Meikältä on hurjan paljon kyselty, että miten ihmeessä Itä-Raleja sijaitseva tutkimusyliopistojen joukkoon kuuluva LUT saa joukkoonsa kanssaan työskentelemään maailman kovimman jätkän, Jamie Hynemanin, myytin murtajista. Niin. Sitä on hyvä miettiä. Mutta totuus on se, että me kysyttiin Jamieä.
Kiitos Juhis.
And by the way, Juhis, you forgot your safety helmet.
Nyt ollaan JHC:n avajaisissa, mutta miten tähän asti on päästy? Tähän matkan varrelle on mahtunut paljon ideointia, suunnittelua ja rakentamista, mutta tästähän se protopajan elämä oikeasti vasta alkaakin. Seuraavaksi nähdäänkin video, joka kertoo meille JHC:n synnystä.
Next, you will see the fascinating journey from the very beginning for this grand opening of Hyneman Center.
idea was to create a robot that can refill itself and then make watering of the flowers by itself automatically. It also measures the distance. You can control it with your phone.
Maybe your best bet, just thinking outside the box, would be to bioengineer some sort of plant that would grow and float around in the ocean. You've got something that's intended to flip things over, right?
This is our trash compactor and it's working right now. The point is to basically get the municipal waste into more compact size. So it did get compressed.
You have parts trays like this that are absolutely filling walls, filled with indeterminate boxes. With this, all we need is to search it on a Raspberry Pi on a small little tablet, and then I just search for LEDs, and voila, here they are.
What we are basically doing is a tandem trike. A trike is a pedal-operated vehicle. We are adding electrical assist to this thing. Motor is handling the hard parts like uphills and if you have heavy load.
This collects data from a heat flux sensor and send it to this device, and this device send it to the cloud.
Monenlaista härveliä. Hienolta näyttää vai mitä?
Okay, are we ready to start working?
Of course we are.
And the best thing, that only good ideas are needed. Jamie Hyneman has good ideas, and I'm pretty sure our students have good ideas too.
Protopajan tarkoituksena onkin tarjota mahdollisuuksia ideoiden testaamiselle. Jamie Hyneman on tässä mestari ja toimii varmasti esikuvana monelle meistä opiskelijoista. Seuraavaksi hän saapuukin lavalle kertomaan, miten protopaja todella herää henkiin.
Please welcome, with a big round of applause, Mr. Jamie Hyneman.
Kiitos. So I don't speak Finnish, except for I'm, slowly building up a few words here and there. I kind of got the impression that Juhas was talking about me and why or how I ended up here. I understand that from his perspective. From my perspective, why is it that I'm here in this particular corner of the world and involved with LUT, and we have a building that's named after me, and we're doing all this stuff? What's up with that? Well, the first and simplest answer is that simply he asked me, and I said to him, well, Finland, cool, and here I am. This is just another of a series of adventures for me, and it kind of is illustrative of the way that I work, the way that my life has kind of, the path that I've followed. And as a part of that, when I ended up here talking with the folks, with Juhas and Marco and Terry and the other people in the team, we realized that there is a sort of a philosophy that I kept telling them about the way that we build things. And so, you know, we started talking about things like these, what if we made a rapid prototyping center and you know, to help build things? And I said, well, that shouldn't be, you know, I've seen these things, and you know, they're popping up around the world in different places, but in many cases, they're just rooms with tools. And that doesn't work for me. A lot of these places that I was seeing were empty. And so what is it that I'm doing that's a little different? And so the people from LUT came to San Francisco to my shop, which is what remains after Mythbusters. It's my personal R&D playground now. And you know, my life there now is pretty much lock the doors, crank the music, and then come out sometime later with stuff. And stuff that ideally is really challenging and inventive and doesn't exist anyplace else. And I'm having a ball with that, as well as coming to visit places like this and others. And at any rate, we started looking at what that is like in my shop and what's unique about it. And we realized that that place is not just a room with some tools in it, it's a lot more than that. And it actually is an active participant in the building and creating process. And so we wanted to create something that works like that here for the students of LUT. And so I'm going to go back to the beginning of kind of my adventure in this sort of building thing and start talking about, well, let's see, I grew up on a farm. I then decided, again, sort of as a random adventure like this particular one is, to learn Russian. And then I went to the Caribbean and bought a sailboat. And so go ahead and show Dulcinea. That was my first boat. I'd become fond of sailing in lakes in the Midwest in Indiana, where I grew up. And I wanted to learn how to sail on the ocean. And so after I graduated from university, I did my homework. I was methodical about it. I researched where I might go to learn how to sail, to get a job on a real sailboat. And so I found the U.S. Virgin Islands was a good place because there are a lot of little islands around this one area. And so you could sail for an hour or two and be at a white sandy beach that had crystal clear water, and it was just beautiful. So I went there and I tried to get a job on a boat. A week after I got there, I had my own boat. I guess it was 6 months after that, I had the boat all fixed up and was starting to charter. I had my captain's license and my dive master's rating, and I was in business. But before I took off on this, you know, business enterprise, I decided that I should take this boat that I'd never actually sailed before, never been on the ocean, you know, on my own boat, and I wanted to, you know, try it out and cruise around the islands a little bit and see what that was like before I got down to business and trying to earn a living doing that. So I brought a friend of mine down. If we can move to next. That's Carlos. He's Latvian, but he was a friend of mine in school, and Carlos was a physicist and a scientist. And I figured, you know, who better to have with me on figuring out how a boat worked, because neither of us knew anything, but he was a lot smarter than I was, and we figured we'd figure it out. So we take off and go on this trip. Next. And where we were is basically down there where it says Charlotte Amalia. That was the port where a lot of cruise ships come in, and eventually I ended up getting all my charter guests off of that, and I would take them out for dives and things like that and sail around in that area. But we wanted to take off and we ended up going through all of these islands. Next. And, you know, we stopped along the way, we enjoyed ourselves, but we decided we wanted to go the furthest island in the chain, which is Anegada over there. And you'll notice that there's sort of a a line that's sort of light, like a hook that comes out. And that's a reef. And that is a notorious reef that, in fact, had collected a lot of ships that would try sailing by here for commerce, and they wouldn't see it because these reefs were just under the water. If they're sailing at night, it'd be too late, and a lot of them crashed. There's hundreds of wrecks around there. And so, next. Of course, I decided to head right for it, and went right around to the middle of that hook there, and you can see a lot of little dots, and they're, coral heads, some above, some below water, but we noticed that there was a ship that turned out to be an old Japanese freighter that wasn't showing up on the charts, so we wanted to investigate. We saw this big hull kind of on its side, so we motored in there, and we kind of worked our way through all of these little coral heads that were every few feet. And if you weren't super careful about it, you'd run into them and potentially sink the boat, which had happened to a lot of other people. But we got as close as we could. We dropped anchor, and we decided to go investigate. Well, keep in mind that this was the first trip that we'd ever taken on this boat, so there was a lot to learn. And it was nice when we got there, but it eventually, it started to cloud over a little bit. We didn't worry about it. We took out my little plastic dinghy, which was, I could pick it up with one hand. It was our way of coming and going from shore if we needed to. And we rowed it over to the boat, or this ship, and got on board, and it was the kind of thing where you had to dive down underwater to get into some of the rooms and come back up where there was air, and meanwhile every wave that was coming in was making this kind of moaning sound where the water was pressurizing in the hull. It was all very eerie, but I ended up finding the engineer's room and finding some parts in there, and saw that there was a lot of stuff that I might want to have in my little tool shop that I had in the boat. And as we stayed there for a few days, but the problem that occurred was that the refrigerator that we were running was electric, and we flattened our batteries, and we couldn't start the diesel. And without the diesel, that meant that if we were going to sail out of there, we'd have to sail upwind, navigating through this maze of coral heads everywhere, and it seemed like a pretty bad idea. And so we were in a little bit of a pickle, and this is way out in the heck of nowhere. And so we had to figure it out. And to jump forward, the diesel had a way that you could hand start it, but it basically meant that we had to take apart the whole engine room, because this is buried down in the boat with all of this cabinetry around it, and you put a crank in one socket on it, and you got in there and you kind of like got it and got a flywheel going, and you're like, and you get it as fast as you could, and then one of us had to shut the valves that were compression valves, and that's what pressurized. So you could get it going without much effort, but the trick was to close those valves at the right time, and then the diesel, pistons would pressurize and it would start the diesel by hand. But for me, it was in this tight space, underneath the cockpit. It could barely move around, using all my strength to get this thing going around. And Carlos would hit the valves, and it was just like, and every joint in my body just like screeching to a hard stop. It was very painful. I'd try it for a few times, and then sit down, try and recover, and do it again. But after a day of doing that, I was a wreck. And so I got in the little rubber dinghy. I took the battery, and we had understood there was a small village that was about 15 kilometers upwind, and I rowed all day long, and to where my hands were bloody. I had to rip on my T-shirt to make bandages, and I'm rowing, and then I get there. And it turns out they only start the generator once a day, and they just shut it down. And so I had a choice of sleeping on the beach overnight or leaving the battery, and they'd charge it up the next day. And And at any rate, so this adventure went on. Basically, I rode back in the middle of the night, and we started to experiment, which is kind of the point of this whole story. We took O-rings from who knows what off the diesel in the engine room in the Japanese freighter, and I made a pulley, or made a belt out of those. We took a knob off of the stereo, took the water pump motor out of the bilge that pressurized the water system, used that as a generator, and rigged a little hand knife sharpener grinder into a pulley with a crank on it, and we hooked up a light bulb that we pulled out of the navigation lights, and we did the math on it, and we figured that if we crank that 24 hours a day for a week, we might get enough to charge the battery to start the diesel, which seemed like kind of a bad idea. So then, because all of my stuff that I had in my life was on that boat, I'd moved out of Indiana and I put it on a container, and everything I had was in there, including my piggy bank, which had a whole bunch of pennies in it. And the physicist friend of mine, reckoned that we could take aluminum foil from the kitchen and pennies and use salt water over the ocean as an electrolyte, and maybe have a battery that could charge up or have a battery that would charge up the battery for starting the diesel. Again, out comes the light, and with both of those cases, we got a little bit of a glow, a little more or less with this or that, but it was clear that it wasn't happening. And so there was all this experimentation, and with no results whatsoever. But at the following morning after the last try of that, I basically woke up with a good cup of coffee and tried it one more time. While we were playing around with all this stuff, my friend had looked very carefully at the diesel and put markings on the flywheel, and he understood that the compression releases had to be closed at a precise sequence, and if you did it exactly right, you would get it. And so he had all of this stuff. We're just making it up as we go, but I went in the engine room and gave it one last shot and gave it all I could, and the diesel started, and we motored out of there, and everything is fine. So that kind of a situation where you're under pressure, you're improvising. In our case, a storm was building, actually, if you want to pull up the next shot. And we kind of had to get the heck out of there. So there's a certain kind of pressure that you tend to perform well under. And I guess over the course of, jump now to around 40 years later, with me here, having gone through, basically I ended up deciding, after running the charter business for a number of years, that I wanted to get into special effects, and I found that I really enjoyed inventing and improvising and trying to work with my hands and so on. So I got into doing special effects. I took off. I worked on hundreds of commercials and movies, a huge range of material or experience with projects of all sorts, because basically our job was anything that a director or producer could dream up, I had to be able to make it. So it was just this mental and physical gymnastics of building stuff for decades. And then Mythbusters came along. I still can't say the word. And that was no longer trying to fake something that looked in a certain way or did a certain thing that was not necessarily real. In this case, we were putting our lives at risk, dealing with explosives and weapons and car crashes and all of these other skills that I had accumulated over a long period of time had all got put to the test on those sorts of situations, and that ended up producing this shop and this person that can build anything. So here we were with this, with the folks from LUT, And we're thinking about these shops and thinking about the potential of these things and this sort of, you know, what's at work here? What's making this what made it so successful for me? And going back to this thing about having a room with some tools in it, it just doesn't work. What I had was something where between me and my instrument, just like a musical instrument or something, I was so attuned to this kind of experience of simply coming in and applying myself, and magically stuff happens. You know, I don't even think about it. It's this automatic thing where, and I expressed this in an earlier talk here in Lappeenranta in terms of something that I call pushing. Because for me, it simply means that I come in and I start to push on something and shit happens. Sorry, kids. And so as an analogy for that, the reason that I come up with, expressing it that way is you're in a room, you've got a refrigerator, you need to move the refrigerator across the room, and you don't know whether it's too big, too heavy, whatever. Even when you're walking into the room, though, you can kind of size it up, and what you're doing is you're starting to collect evidence, almost like a forensic investigation. You know, it's bigger than I am. Okay, so maybe it's heavier than I am. It's shaped this way or that way. And you go up and you push on it. It doesn't move. What do? Well, you look at it, you walk around it, you collect more evidence by looking at making observations. And likely as not, you're going to grab a corner and try and see if you can just twist it a little bit, see if you can get some kind of movement. And sure enough, you're able to slide it. And then pretty soon you're rotating it across the room and you get it where it needs to go. That's what my experience in these shops is like. I've got these tools, I've got materials, I've got something that I want to do, or I have an idea of what I want to do. And I simply try to find something that I can start pushing on to see what happens. You need to get some kind of movement. And the point there is when you look at that adventure of being in the Caribbean, and let's see, we're not ready for the next slide. And you end up with something that basically says that, it points out this feature that maybe you've heard before, that is that you will fail at 100% of the things that you don't try. And so I'm somebody that has found out this magic formula that I have a place where I can go and try things, and it's amazing what you can produce as a result of that. You know, I've evolved from some kid that was stuck on a boat in the Caribbean to somebody that's had hundreds or maybe thousands of experiences of coming in and trying to analyze, collecting evidence, forming some kind of hypothesis about something that I can do to make something start to move, and then things happen. So our goal in analyzing this at LUT was to recreate this, and in fact we realized that this is sort of it's more than just, you know, making some gadget or other. This is something that can be applied to all sorts of things. It's almost like a philosophy. This is where we came up with, where I came up with speed building at one point, because I was constantly in these commercials facing situations where this director had come up with this impossible thing that he wanted to have made in a very short period of time. And so I would, as a rule, if the money was there, I would say, I can do it. And that was because I understood that if I went in there and I started to push on things, I was going to make things happen. I had to generate my own methodology for working quickly. The speed building, by the way, so I don't want to get too esoteric about it, but it simply means that you'd have your crew, you go around with a list that you write down, you check with them, you have everything you need, do you have any problems, where are you going to be 2 hours from now? How much are you going to get done? And you write that down. And then you go through the whole crew and you do that. In 2 hours, you're back there. where are you? Are you having any problems? Where are you going to be 2 hours from now? Well, the thing is that I knew that as a rule, they always are never where they said that they're going to be, because it's easy to list out the things that you know you've got to do. It's not so easy to list out the things that you don't know, because you don't know about them. So you've got to be able to, if you're going to be an accurate estimate of your time, you've got to be able to somehow generate or add in a factor for the stuff that you don't know. And I figured out this little secret with this process was that even if they know, and I was explicit about it, they know that after a few tries like that they're never meeting their goals, but they can't help themselves. They still do it over and over and over again. And so you're always, what you end up with as an end result is you've got them focused on how do they get to where they said that they were going to be. They really want that. And so they focus on that, and they try to see the future. They try to see ahead. And this kind of generates a momentum in their process. At the same time, I'm monitoring what they're doing so I can, anticipate problems for them, make sure they have their materials and all these things. And they can't get mad at me for bossing them around and telling them that they're not working fast enough. They're the ones that told me how fast they're going to work. And so I'm just asking them to do what they said. And so it ends up we end up being able to create, impossibly difficult things in very, very short times with this technique, because it sets up a feedback loop among the entire crew on some of these projects, where they're just, they're frothing at the bit as they're moving through these projects, and they're just amazed that all of a sudden they're in this experience that I've described, where they had the idea and pop, there's the thing. It happens that fast. So that's speed building. That's what the name of this thing is, of this talk is. And it sort of illustrates that this concept, this philosophy, doesn't point directly at making some kind of gadget. It can be a process that is a way of working with people. It can be a process that's problem solving, or a process that's generating ideas. It's this idea of going in and pushing at something and trying to create movement. In our case with the speed building thing, even doing a little psychology there, looking at analyzing the process itself and creating a new process that fits a particular situation. So that's what we've tried to do with the shop here at LUT. I want to finish with a couple of things. One is, go ahead and go to the next clip. This is my wife, and this was the first time that I developed this thing with hats, I think. I thought it was kind of funny, but it was not terribly practical. The wind tended to blow the darn thing off, so hence the beret that comes up from time to time. But anyway, we eventually left the Caribbean. We moved up to New York City. I got into special effects. She became a biology teacher, and we moved to California, and now I'm here for some reason. So, and I guess you can go to the next clip. Do we have the? Oh no, the one of the firefighting device. Next clip. Okay, so this is where I'm at now, and these projects are not gadgets. They're not some little thing. I'll quickly run through what this is. This just got put on a truck right before I came to Finland this trip. And what this is to deal with the big fires that we're having in the West. This is a modified armored personnel carrier that's used by the military, except this particular variant is not armored. It's sort of a truck version that would carry cargo like ammo or food or other supplies along with the armored personnel carriers and people that would go into a battle. It's tracked, it's amphibious, it's about, let's see, about 6 meters or so long, and it is made to go into a fire. There are no vehicles that are like this. We have 1,000 gallons of water on board. These things on the top that look like antennas are remote-controlled monitors that spray water, and the coating on the outside is, sorry about the Fahrenheit, it's 3,000 degree Fahrenheit tolerant proximity suit material. There's another layer of something like that underneath it that's bonded to the hull, and there are a whole plethora of features with this, that among which are that we use the heat sink of the 1,000-gallon supply of water. If we haven't spent it all on putting out a fire, we use that to collect whatever heat that makes it through the heat-proof armor, and we dump that as a heat sink into it via sprayers. So basically this is a robot with a rainstorm inside that is spraying anything that needs to be cooled, and in the process it acts as an industrial scrubber to remove soot and to cool the air which the diesel is ingesting for its combustion or air cooling, or its normal cooling system. So this is a whole integrated thing. It's got sprayers that spray down on the tracks. You can see sprayers in the front there. And so we are able to, in theory, go into a fire, and there's several levels of things that this will do. The one that we are pretty sure that we can do is that if there is somebody in an area that has been evacuated because a fire is imminent and they haven't made it, we can send this thing in and get them. There are, from then on, it goes to things like if we have enough of them, we may be able to create a protective bubble around a neighborhood, or if the firefighters are fighting with this thing, which they would use like a conventional Wildlands fire truck, they'd ride it in, it's still operable. We made it so that it's manually operable. They can ride it into the area and use it like a conventional device. Or they can say, well, we want to be a few hundred feet away, and they can just use a joystick on a remote controller. Or, this is the ultimate thing with this, we've got a VR system that collects LiDAR, radar, ultrasonics, Google Earth, US Geological Survey maps, heat vision, regular vision, and layers of virtual environment of the fire and what they're seeing. So when you're operating it, you're wearing goggles and you're seeing a composited image that basically sees through smoke or vegetation or gives you any information that's possible for a modern electronic technology to collect, and you can drive it off at unlimited distance doing that. So this is a really unique device, and it's a good example of what the kinds of things that people that are going into our shop in a kind of an ultimate sense would be able to have an idea and then make a thing. You look at all the different processes that are in this, understanding of fire, we've got hydraulics, servo pneumatics, we've got diesel engines, we've got different materials and thermal sorts of situations. There's just a plethora of things. That was about 4 people for pretty much, well, for 9 months to actually modify it. We've taken high-end electric motorcycles and made that we've found or purchased from being salvaged in a wreck, and we've made it a hybrid electric water pump kind of system with it. I could go on and on about it, but hopefully we'll be saving some lives with these. Because these are surplus military equipment that have been mothballed, they'd be available in large quantities and potentially ultimately be able to create what I refer to as a wildlands fire, a mobile fire break, where it moves along and adapts to the changing needs of a fire, potentially even able to stop it, in its tracks at some point. So I guess that's my whole story, is that paint a sort of picture of why these shops are important. I mean, these things, when you're inventing these things, you can't invent something in a vacuum. we're providing a context of tools and materials and a way to work in teams on things to make complex stuff out of nothing, except for that context and some of those basic things. And so as a teaching tool, providing this for students or for anybody that wants to really optimize their ability to create things, this is how I've come about this and seeing it as more than just a room with some tools. It's a whole philosophy, and you can see through my life and its progression, starting as a kid that grew up on a farm to somebody that can, make things like this. That's my story. I'm sticking with it. Thank you. So, how am I doing, Juhas? Was I too long?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Anyway, thank you, Jamie.
Sure.
The audience has sent some questions for you beforehand.
Yeah, if we have some time, so yeah, you have some that were sent in by the audience,
Yeah,
and then we're going to open the floor for some general questions or comments.
Yeah. So the first one is about your childhood. How was your childhood, and where do all these ideas and creativity come from?
It was great, and I just explained it.
Okay, that's true.
Sorry, I had a great childhood, and I did just pretty much explain it. It speaks towards the benefit of having a wide variety of experiences, building a foundation of knowledge. I've worked as a cook. I've worked in construction. I've worked in effects. I've done. I was a concrete inspector. I worked on a boat and diving and sailing, and I've lived through hurricanes at sea and all sorts of stuff. So it's good.
And interesting.
Yeah, sure.
Well, this next question is something you haven't answered yet. So, how do you see the technology evolving into near future, and where can the science take us?
Well, I think we're all kind of able to answer that question. If you look at the news, you look at the new developments of, the internet, the things that are popping up like CRISPR and the genetics end of things, artificial intelligence and autonomy. I see what is happening, as we've all seen, I believe, not just the existence of these things, but an acceleration of them. To the point that we can barely keep up with them. I do want to see and encourage people to realize that we still live in a real world where we eat real food and we've got real buildings over our head. Apps don't do that, and yet we spend an awful lot of our energy and focus on these things that we have, and so they're helping us. But I think we need to do due diligence in trying to, pay attention to where our food comes from and so on, which we are, and things like the genetic stuff is going to help us, but. Some people are not even believing that we have global warming yet. So, that's an important thing to keep in note as the bedrock of the decisions that we make in places that we take our technology, is realizing that the real world exists and it's going to bite us if we don't respect it.
Yes, thank you. That was a really good point. So, how about the audience? Do you have any questions for Jamie?
Oh, there's
over there.
I can see. Yeah, they'll give you. If you haven't figured this out, we're streaming this, so that's why they want it on the microphones.
Okay, Markku Antiniemi from Tampere. I was just wondering which is more demanding or rewarding, getting the concepts working or getting people working together?
That's an excellent question. Well, and the answer, the way that I've presented it, is they're one and the same thing. Neither of them does anything without the other, and So it's a situation of trying to, as I've mentioned or tried to describe, where you figure out systems of allowing the two to work together in harmony, and I also think that there's one of the things that I was talking about earlier, this thing of context. Well, people themselves are a context that you work within, and so one of the things that I've noticed and that our show put out there quite a bit was that you can work with people that you don't like or that are completely different than you, and it's even better than somebody that is exactly like you, because if they think exactly like you do, what's the point in collaborating with them? And when you start to collaborate with somebody that you don't like, you argue, and that tug of war tends to reveal things, and that's also a type of context that I'm describing, where these things, these ideas, these things that you build, they don't just pop out of the air. They have to find leverage on things, and that leverage can be people, that can be things, that can be reality, that can be anything that you can find purchase to start to push against.
Thank you.
There's one over there.
Go ahead.
He's bringing it. That's it, teamwork.
Hello again. Do you agree with or disagree with the statement of best is enemy of good?
Best is enemy of good?
Of good, yes.
I don't know what that means.
Well, some people takes too long making things the best possible, and they take so long that they lose the time. And some people just makes it good enough, and they get with the solution on time.
Oh, well, I totally understand that, and I would say that's, again, contextually dependent. There are some cases when all that is required is good enough, and there are other times when things really need to be perfected to accomplish a task. Some tasks that are borderline possible may need the best product to be able to pull off what they're doing. If it's almost impossible to begin with, they need a little help. So it entirely depends. Someone else? There's some.
Okay, Antti Pellinen, and thank you for a very inspiring presentation. When you start working on a challenge or solving a problem, do you usually take multiple different approaches to it from technological point of view or conceptual point of view, or do you just work on one approach on a challenge and get it solved by that?
That's interesting. I would say I would tend to follow the path of least resistance, and if there's something that is working that seems to be effective and everything, then I would, and I run into that first, I would take that path. If I'm not satisfied, or if again, depending on the context, I would, of course, try different things until I get something that is the right fit. When you look at someone like me that has a wide variety of, a wide range of experience, sometimes these things are intuitive, and you go along a certain path, and something in your brain will tickle a little bit that maybe there's a better way, or it doesn't feel quite right. I think I'm missing with something, and your brain can sometimes make those connections, again, as a part of a broad foundation of experience. That's what, we all know about the subconscious and some of the things that aren't, that you don't understand where those ideas come from or how you were able to pull something off, and that's a result of that foundation. So sometimes we can we can have that in our choices about what process that we want to take, because we'll find there may be things that we don't know, but our brain does, and is telling us that we should have another look and try something else and see whether it seems to solve that. There's someone over there. Oh, there we go.
Hello, Jimmy.
Hi.
Thank you for your presentation. And I'm a Chinese. My question is that I'm not sure if you have any idea about the development of technology in China. And I want to ask if there's something different between China and...
I'm barely understanding anything. You can try not using the microphone and just shout it out, and I'll repeat it so they can hear online.
All right. My question is that how do you think the development of technology in China, and what's the difference between China and like America and the most of European countries?
Okay, so the question is differences between China and America and European countries, and the way that they approach technology and engineering. Is that what you're referring to? Well, I've collaborated with people in Europe and America, so I know a lot more about them than in China. I can't speak really. The only thing that I can see is the end result, which in some cases the general impression that we have is that European and American products have higher quality than Chinese ones, but I don't think that, I think that's because of a lot of the materials that, or the products that we receive are, the motivation for using them in the first place is when they're less expensive. And so I think China has gotten into a place as a little bit more of an emerging power with regard to new technologies and everything, is that people are buying them initially because they're less expensive. It's not that Chinese products can't be made better, and I believe we're starting to see things coming out of China that are very competitive or even better than what we're making. So I'm not sure that I can talk more than that, because I've not been in China working with Chinese people. So I know that I also tend to think of products that are coming out of Europe as better quality than what the United States is producing. But it sort of depends, and I think there's a lot of that whole thing can change in a heartbeat. I hope that we all learn to support each other and not fuss with some of these trades and tariff arguments that we're having.
I'm Annika Wolf. My question is, how young do you think is too young, and how can we foster this make it and build it and make it happen mindset in the next generation?
How young is too young when it comes to building? Well, I would say that I don't think that there is any age that is too young. And in fact, this is one of my favorite themes, is looking at engineering and invention, innovation as something that young children are actually excellent at, because they're doing exactly what I'm recommending in the JHC. They're having a playful attitude about what they're doing. They're constantly running experiments. They'll turn on a dime and try something new if what they're working on isn't giving them what they want. And so these are little scientists that I would give them every resource that you can possibly can to encourage them to do what nature already automatically has them do. But the more you can help them with that, the better. Does that answer anything? Yeah, I mean, you probably are best not giving a circular saw to your, you know, your 3-year-old. You know, I'm just saying, but.
Okay, so now we have time for one more question. Go ahead.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. My name is Juhani Talvela, and in LUT we also carry out research on patents and IPR from the technology management point of view. Just asking about your viewpoint to the intellectual property patents and so forth. And I very quickly looked at my phone and I saw that there are 11 patents under the name Hyneman. I don't know if they are all yours, or if all your patents are there. But do you patent? When you do inventions, do you patent them? And how do you feel about patenting and taking these inventions to the commercial world?
Those are not all mine. I have there are several that are not listed. There are like 1 or 2 that are that have an IP behind them. The point of the patents is without the patents, people aren't going to be motivated to invest. If they invest in something that they don't have control of and somebody else can just take it, I suppose you can be very secretive about it, and some companies take that approach where they focus on just having people sign non-disclosures that work with them and then enforce those. A lot of the companies that I work with seem to rely on non-disclosures more than they do on the patents per se, but it depends on the product. If it's a mass-produced product that can be easily replicated, that's one thing. If you've got a company that's if you're the inventor and you have the wherewithal to produce and market the product yourself, that's something that you'll have better control over, and maybe you want a patent or maybe you don't. Frankly, I've been involved with a lot of different things, but I tend to focus on the actual basically once I've figured something out and I see that it works, I'm no longer interested in it. That's what I exist for. It's like, I like the gratification of actually seeing it work, but the joy part of it is the idea, and then the rest of it is like, I don't care about making gobs of money by making some kind of product that everybody's got to have, but that's just me. I'm sort of, when I get in the zone, I'm a dog out after a scent, and once I've caught the little beast, I'm moving on to the next one. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie.
So I'm supposed to stay up here, aren't I?
Here. Jamie Hyneman has helped in speed building with some first projects and prototypes, which have been going on at JHC during previous week. This kind of speed building will be one of the activities in the future in JHC. Now, it is time to reward the groups for their active work during the past weeks. Jamie has chosen Knipex cutter, which will like always in the protolab, it happens for us too.
Yeah. So the teams that were assembled in JHC, they all had their own idea. They plowed through it. They built it. They did something akin to the speed building with it. And so as a president, I wanted to give them a gift of something that is this particular tool. It's really geeky. It's something that only somebody that works with things would appreciate. But this is a Knipex, a German company. These wire cutters are like, there's none better. So I mean, there are very few tools that I can say that about with anything, but these are some of them. So we're going to give one to each of the members of the team. They'll have them the rest of their lives as long as they don't let them rust.
JHC:lla on myös teollisuusyhteistyökumppani Kemppi Oy. Kemppi on lahjoittanut kaikille speedbuildingiin osallistujille tällaiset upeat JHC-kustomoidut hitsauskypärät. Ja nämä palkinnot saapuu jakamaan Teresa Kemppi-Vasama. Tervetuloa.
Moniko meistä on joutunut etsimään joskus tavaraa, jonka tietää olevan jossain, mutta juuri nyt ei tiedä, minne sen on laittanut. Ensimmäinen palkittava ryhmä on kehittänyt uuden tavan varastoida ja erityisesti löytää näitä tavaroita. Tämä voisi olla myös meille hyödyllinen IHC:ssä, siellä kun on monenlaista poranterää ja pientä mutteria. A new way to store the parts. Welcome on the stage. Follow the light.
One for you, and one for you. Good job. Okay. Who's next?
Kiitos.
Thank you.
Seuraavana ryhmänä meillä on Thunder Strike, a two-seater electric strike vehicle. Yliopistolla toimii Tippa-team pisaralla pisimmälle kerho, jonka tavoitteena on rakentaa mahdollisimman vähällä energialla kulkevia laitteita ja ajoneuvoja nimenomaan. Tämän tiimin edustajat ovat kehitelleet sähköavusteista kaksipaikkaista ajoneuvoa. Tervetuloa lavalle noutamaan palkintonne.
Go. One for everybody. Nicho. There we go. No niin.
Seuraava palkittava ryhmä on suunnitellut prototyyppiä kotitalouskäyttöön tulevasta energiajätepuristimesta. Tällä tuotteella olisi käytännön arvoa jokaiselle meistä. Kaikkihan me tiedämme, kuinka nopeasti muoviroskis täyttyy kaiken maailman muovijätteestä. The next group has developed a waste compactor for households energy waste. Welcome to Trash Jack.
There's 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, who's next? We got somebody else? Or was that all?
Okay, so
Okay.
unlike the last product, this prototype may not be needed in every household. However, you can learn a lot about the technique by building your own paddlebot. Seuraava ryhmä on rakentanut robotin, jollaisia käytetään robottien taistelukisoissa. Näitä ei ehkä tarvita ihan jokaisessa kotitaloudessa, mutta tästäkin oppii paljon tekniikkaa, jota voi hyödyntää muussa elämässä. Please welcome Paddlebot Group.
Sorry. Thank you. Thanks. Thanks. Okay.
Valtamerissä on nykyään suuret määrät muoviroskaa, joka ei sinne kuulu. Meriin ajautuneet jätekertymät pitäisi pystyä keräämään sieltä pois. Our following prototype tries to answer the big question of the world: how to collect huge amounts of waste out of the oceans. Please welcome Ocean Ranger.
Thank you.
Jamie, we have something for you.
Oh, a sombrero.
Of course. From Mexico.
No, from Mexico. Well, thank you. It's a little too small, though. Thank you. Okay.
Okay, so last but not least is a group that has been developing a novel way of measuring human energy expenditure in sports and welfare applications. This cloud-based system utilizes heat flux sensors in a wristband device. This new sensor can improve the accuracy of energy measurements compared to heart rate monitors or activity trackers. Aktiivisuusrannekkeen kaltainen laite mittaa ihmisen energiakulutusta uudenlaisella lämpövuoanturilla. Liikkeen ja sykkeen lisänä laite tuottaa tarkemman tiedon ihmisen energiakulutuksesta, josta on hyötyä liikunnassa ja lääketieteessä. Tervetuloa vastaanottamaan palkintonne Go Health!
Yes. Thank you. Okay. All right.
We are right. Annetaan vielä kaikille yhdessä iso käsi.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Seuraavaksi sitten siirrytään katsomaan vielä yhden high-tech-projektin etenemistä.
I guess this high-tech project is about robotics or something like that.
One for the trouble, two for the time. Come on, y'all, let's fighter. Couple of rides you rode, I mix them all up and then divider. Hot beside a rider, got her up, this wall is slider. Ride a hook, look at my potato crook. Underground, round, brown, always kept in the oven. Bound stuffing, bound to swing my sack potatoes. Knock your plug off and hit you in your crater. Hot potato, hot potato, potato, hot potato, hot potato, hot potato, hot.
I'm better sleeping on my own, 'cause if you like the way you look that much, oh baby, you should go and love yourself. And if you
1, 2, 3, 4. Get up, get on up, get up, get on up. Stay on the scene, get on up, like a sex machine. Get on up, get up, get on up, get up, get on up. Stay on the scene, get on up, like a sex machine. Get on up, get up. Come on, stay on the scene, like a sex machine. The way I like it is the way it is. I got mine, dig it. He's got his. Stay on the scene like a loving machine. Stay on the scene like a loving machine. Stay on the scene. I want to count it off one more time here. Go ahead. You want to hit it like it did on the top, fellas? Hit it like it did on the top. Hit it now.
Street Culture Club.
Ihmisrobotteina tanssivat Hiski Hämäläinen, Aleksi Esala, Joni Koikkalainen, Jyri Poikonen, Lauri Markkanen, Anssi Saviluoto, Jesse Mäkinen ja Niko Lensu. And thank you, Jamie, for being with us through this fascinating journey.
And thank you for the audience. It's been a great night with you tonight.
No niin.
JHC-matkaprotopojen maailmassa alkaa nyt. Toivottavasti nähdään teidät kaikki siellä. Kiitos myös kaikille yhteistyökumppaneille.
See you in Hyneman Center. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.